Woo! Man, I got to tell you, that was close. I thought we were going to get through a season without hearing anything stupid out of Sheryl Swoopes' mouth and anything that sounds rather interesting, something that you might choose to give some side-eye to.
In a stunning move, the Indiana Fever shook the basketball world by cutting not one, but two high-profile rookies from their roster. As fans scrambled to make sense of the decision, the WNBA was hit with a plot twist no one saw coming. Sheryl Swoopes, longtime critic of Caitlin Clark, stepped back into the spotlight, not just to take aim at Clark, but to call out the entire Fever organization as if launching a personal comeback tour with a mission.
And you have a black player that just got cut, and Sheryl Swoopes is not happy about that.
Just when everyone thought Sheryl Swoopes had faded into the background, she re-emerged out of nowhere. What did she have to say this time? And how is the Indiana Fever responding to all the noise? What started as a routine roster shakeup quickly exploded into a full-blown league drama, packed with tension and headline-grabbing twists. Drop your thoughts on Swoopes in the comments. Let's talk about it.
Call me nuts, but unfortunately for the old WNBA fandom and media, in her case, media and old players, unfortunately, in some cases, you do feel like there is something else lurking behind said opinions that may not be basketball related. Let's put it that way.
Let's start with the cuts that made headlines. In one of the most surprising preseason moves in recent memory, the Indiana Fever waived Bree Hall, the dynamic guard and two-time national champion from South Carolina, before she even had a chance to play in the Fever's season opener against Washington. She logged just a few minutes against Brazil, and then she was gone. If that felt like a shock, buckle up. The Fever weren't done yet.
Bree Hall is now gone, as you know. And today it was announced that Yvonne Ejim has been waived by the Fever as well. Sophie Cunningham talked about that yesterday, saying you can latch on to another team, another place.
Just because you didn't make a roster doesn't mean you're out of the W forever.
Just a day later, the Fever announced that two more rookies, both with standout college careers and real potential, were shown the door before they even had time to settle in. Among them was Gonzaga's leading scorer, Yvonne Ejim, a player with enough heart to energize the entire Pacific Northwest. The harsh reality of professional basketball was on full display. Neither had time to find their rhythm before being cut. In moments like these, the cold math of roster building often outweighs raw talent, proving once again that timing and fit can matter more than potential.
So the Indiana Fever, as expected, have waived Yvonne Ejim. She's just not at the level that the Indiana Fever are hoping her to be at.
The Fever announced it directly. Thank you, Yvonne Ejim, who was the all-time leading scorer in Gonzaga history.
Naturally, the question becomes, why these two players? To understand the decision, you have to look at the Fever's salary cap situation. The team was already constrained after buying out Katie Lou Samuelson's hefty contract to make room for key veteran signings. With limited cap space, they could only afford to carry 11 players on the roster, including veterans like Natasha Howard. Players like DeWanna Bonner, Dana Evans, Nalissa Smith, Christy Wallace, and Kelsey Mitchell all have at least partially guaranteed contracts, meaning the Fever would still be on the hook financially even if they were released. That locked in 10 of the 11 roster spots. The only players whose contracts could be removed from the books are those still on their original rookie deals, namely Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hall. And let's be honest, no one in their right mind is cutting those three.
Man, it's hard, right? We all reached out. I think that they brought really good people in, great people into training camp this year. But just because you didn't make this squad, this is probably one of the harder rosters to make in the W this year. It doesn't mean you're out of the W, and you just got to keep ready, keep playing, keep grinding it out. And if it's hard to make the league. I know Sid and I, we were second rounders. We stuck. Her experience is a little bit different than mine, but just because you didn't make a roster doesn't mean you're out of the W forever.
With her ability to run the floor and deliver elite defense, fans are already calling Michaela Timpson the steal of the draft, snagged at 19th overall when many projected her as a top 10 pick. given the Fever's need for young, athletic forwards. In the rotation, she's become a standout. But in reality, all three rookies, including Timpson, who's shown flashes of brilliance throughout training camp and preseason, are competing for just one available roster spot.
Michaela Timpson is obviously at a certain level. She's a rim runner. She just obviously has a higher ceiling than Ejim at the moment. And this is maybe a hot take.
These cuts sting not just because of the talent lost, but because they represented hope. In an instant, two dreams were put on hold. For fans of Bree Hall and Yvonne Ejim, this wasn't just a numbers game. It was the brutal reality of professional sports, where salary caps, limited roster spots, and the pressure to contend for a championship collide with raw potential and ambition.
After all, we saw Sheryl Swoopes in rare form, hating on Caitlin Clark all last year. Well, maybe she has figured out, well, hating on Clark, I've been told that's not really a great idea, yada, yada, yada. So what other white girls can I tune up from the Indiana Fever?
Unsurprisingly, the response was swift, and Sheryl Swoopes was leading the charge, megaphone in hand. When news broke of Bree Hall's release, Swoopes lit up like she'd been waiting all off-season for this exact kind of drama. But her return wasn't playful or passive. It was loud, pointed, and felt more like an all-out offensive than a casual commentary.
Okay, example. The Washington Mystics Indiana Fever game. Because I know on social media, people were like, well, why aren't the starters in for the Mystics? They could win this game. And I was there, right? Because preseason is about, yes, you're going to play your starters. You're going to play your players. Typically, they don't even play that many minutes, right? Because you have so many players on your roster that you got to make roster cuts. So you're still trying to figure out who can fit what we're doing.
In the latest episode of the Women's Hoop Show, Sheryl Swoopes didn't just voice concerns. She unleashed a full-blown verbal takedown of head coach Stephanie White. Swoopes accused White of mishandling rotations and going so far as to sabotage her own team. She openly questioned why Bree Hall was left on the bench while players with less upside were given key minutes.
But I did have a question, though, with Indiana, right? Because even though the starters weren't in, like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull they've been in the league for a while. You actually had players who, like Bree Hall, why wasn't she in that game per se? If you're still trying to figure out who's going to make the team, who you're going to cut. So I was a little confused with what Steph was doing.
If you're still wondering why Bree Hall never saw meaningful minutes, Sheryl Swoopes made it crystal clear. She wasn't just calling out coaching decisions, she was calling out double standards. The real message was louder than the words. This wasn't only about basketball IQ. It was about who gets grace, who gets a chance to prove themselves, and who gets sidelined before ever stepping on the court. And if you thought Swoopes was done, think again. She turned up the heat by directly questioning the roles of two players who benefited most from Stephanie White's rotation choices, Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull. The way she framed it sent shockwaves through WNBA Twitter, igniting a firestorm of reactions that still hasn't cooled.
Ariafin. Okay. This is gonna be a spicy season because Kiki was like, what, Sophie? Girl, don't come over here. Sophie was like,
already,
I was
game
here
one.
Here for it. But the fact that's a rookie, right?
I know.
Kiki,
she did not back down.
But she just turned and laughed. She was like, what? What did you say? What are we doing?